Welcome to Socializing Security, where every week we have a discussion about security, compliance, and beyond.
Our goal is to learn and grow by socializing each week's topic with each other, our guests, and with you.
A quick compliance note, this podcast is meant for informational purposes only and should not be considered legal or regulatory advice.
We're glad you've joined us, and we hope you'll learn along with us.
All right, well, welcome back to another episode of Socializing Security. The last time you heard from us, we had our introductory episode, and we were just getting excited about talking about this thing that we're building here at Socializing Security, and gave a brief little introduction of Brian and myself, Milu. We thought it would be really nice if we would just take some time to introduce each other more formally. And so today I'm going to take a backseat and I'm going to be asking Brian to introduce himself. Brian and I have worked together in a past life and are close friends now and are doing this podcast together as like a new passion project. So I know Brian pretty well, but I'll try my best to try to introduce him to our audience so that everybody else gets to know him as well as I do.
Yeah, it can definitely be tough to interview a friend and make it sound reasonable to outsiders, and inside jokes and all that kind of thing that just aren't going to land with a lot of people. So it's tough, but I think it'll be good for all of you.
Well, I'll tell you that I'm so grateful that you consider us friends now, because in the past when we used to work together, our teams were like not really related. And I remember being like, oh, Brian is like this like super cool, very smart guy. And I thought you were quite intimidating. And I don't know if you know that, but I thought you were like very impressive. And when I talk about you, I'm always like, oh, he's such a unicorn. He's so good at what he does. And I just like learn so much when we hang out. And so I'm just excited to get the opportunity to do this with you, and also just have other people like hear about your experience and your background.
Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate that. So yeah, thank you for that, Milo. That means a lot to me. I don't view myself as intimidating whatsoever, so it's kind of weird to hear that. But yeah, so because pronunciations matter. My name is Brian Knutson. I'm
going to say that again, Knutson. I still practice because I have definitely said it wrong before, and I have a unique name as well with Milu, so Knutson.
Yeah. Yep. And it's with a last name like mine and a first name like yours, I think we're both pretty sensitive to that and have definitely talked about that several times. So
yeah, I mean, I respond to anything. Truly, it's pretty much.
It doesn't make sense to correct people every time anymore. So yeah, I mean, I've had a long history in the IT space. It started in the late 90s with the whole web movement. I started playing with HTML when I was still in high school, and did it for fun with Notepad. And, it was literally just text-based at that point. With, being advanced, you could throw graphics onto a web page. So played with that, said, hey, can I make a career out of this? This is kind of fun. Went to school, classic computer science. Started my career as a web developer. Eventually moved my way into more systems analysis, managing servers and code, and just kind of architecting things. It was a lot of fun. I'm a problem solver, as I've discovered over the years, and that was a great place for me to be at that point, because I was able to have real impact. At one point, they were like, hey, we're running out of space in our data center. Can you help us figure out a solution here? And so I went and discovered VMware, and that really was the tone of my career from then on. Dug deep into that, super technical, learned every in and out, started user groups and communities around that, both locally where I live in Nebraska as well as globally, and got to the point where I'm like, okay, I want to continue to expand beyond this one company. Made a move to more of a consulting type of role where I could expand that and see it across a lot of different companies. So I got that opportunity to see not just my own environment and what I had control over, but what I had to come in and say, help somebody else do in their environment. Very much a parachute in, parachute out type of a situation in a lot of cases. That's when blogging became a big deal. Started doing some freelance writing along the way. Did really enjoy that. I enjoyed the communication. I was doing a lot of presenting at like lunch and learns and stuff. Just really enjoyed that crafting a story, communicating to people, helping people learn just generic technology. And so decided to move into technical marketing at that point.
So started kind of on the more technical side, and then really transitioned from from one side of the business to like a very different side of the business, which is what I believe makes you unique, because those personalities generally are very different, which is why I'm always like, he's a unicorn. He's super technical and then also so approachable and friendly and really good at explaining things to leaders across the business. And so you made it into technical marketing, and then what did you do with it?
Yeah. So, I mean, at that point, I had realized I had a special talent of communicating and understanding technology and being able to kind of merge the two. Being in a pre-sales type of role, I was able to have the opportunity to communicate with, the nerdiest nerds, people that were working at much bigger companies than I worked at, while also being able to go in and sit down with a CIO and explain the business value of a given solution and say, if you implement this, yeah, I can get into the dirty details with you if you want, but ultimately this is what you're going to gain. Made for a very good recipe for going into technical marketing. And that's where I said, I want to learn the technology at a very deep level and then communicate that to every audience that needs to hear that. So that's where I was able to make that pivot. Felt I was pretty successful in that. Did a lot of, there's a lot of variations when you get into that, because it's not just communicating to customers on a webinar or presenting or writing a white paper. It's enablement, usually within the organization. So you're talking to people who know the technology probably as well as you do, and helping them understand how to message it better, helping them understand what new features, functions, products are, and sometimes not just to the technical, the sales engineers, but also the salespeople that may not be technical at all. And of course, you've got to communicate up and down the chain. When you've got to talk to product, you have to talk to engineers, you have to talk to regular marketing folk who don't know the technology at all. They just know
Compliance people?
And compliance people. Absolutely. I mean, it's a role I love. It's a position I love because it allows a lot of flexibility around who you communicate with. And, I'm one of the things that motivates me. And, once we were working together, it was a relatively small company. So I had the opportunity to touch all sorts of parts of the business. And I love that. I love being in the know and understanding, hey, accounting, you've got some challenges that are affecting customers, and I hear it from the salespeople, and I know you hear it on occasion, but let me help you understand where those challenges are, and maybe we can go fix those together. I love that communication aspect of it, and working together collaboratively to fix a problem.
Yeah, and I mean, I think this is why you and I are actually so well matched, is because we both have this natural ability to understand different team priorities and still champion the things that we care about and the things we have to do, but are very, honestly, I think disarming when we talk to different teams, because we get it. Your background is different because you were technical first. I have the opposite, that I was legal first, then technical. And so it's interesting, because I think while we were working together, we were learning from each other in that sense, that I was coming from different types of global regulatory requirements, because this was a global business where we were working through different challenges that sometimes they were new, and other times it was oh, this might be new to us. And so, those are things that we're trying to figure out. And I think you and I have had such success mutually because we are good at that. And so where are you now?
Yeah. So I'm still in the kind of technical marketing realm. I've moved away from that VMware space, the server infrastructure kind of space that I started off in and really kind of built my career up to this point. Through some circumstances, had the opportunity to start really diving into the cybersecurity space, which is an area I've always been interested in. It's always been one of those that it's one of my big messages to people today, as I have become more of a cybersecurity professional, is, security is everybody's problem. Nobody is immune from or left out of the security puzzle. Everybody's a part of it. And one of the things I like to talk about now as a cybersecurity professional is the fact that security is everybody's problem, is part of everybody's job. Nobody is excused from being a part of that puzzle. And so that's always been kind of a thing for me from the beginning. I've always kind of thought that way. And I didn't always think like a cybersecurity professional, and I didn't always do all the things that we'll talk about on how to protect yourself the most. But, always had that thought process of, if security is going to work, it's going to take me as a developer, me as a sysadmin, me as an architect to be thinking about it when I do my job. It's not something that can bolt on at the end. So it's always been an area of interest for me. It's just never really had the opportunity. And, a door got cracked open and I said, let's kick that door open. And quite frankly, I dove in head first and just kind of took on any role, any responsibility I could get my hands on to start to learn it and start to become a part of it and start to interact with the people on that side that were running that part of the business. And so now, I work for a company that does, cyber resiliency around data specifically, and being able to take kind of my infrastructure background and the things about how you deal with data and you manipulate data and you protect data, along with having a healthy dose of that cybersecurity and making sure that we are focusing on, there's a phrase that gets used, shifting to the left, meaning you put it as early in the process as possible. And, while data protection products are oftentimes thought about as being on the far right side of the puzzle, when you look at what role a data protection solution can play in an organization, it can shift quite a bit to the left. And, I'm really excited to be able to dig into that, to be able to play that part in really a major move in the entire industry. Like the whole industry is kind of moving that direction. And so it's kind of an exciting place for me to be in that regard.
Yeah. Do you ever find, I don't know if I just have this like imposter syndrome, but I never anticipated to like call myself a cybersecurity expert. That was just not something that I like ever would have thought of myself, especially sometimes I'm personally, I'm like, oh, I'm not that technical. I'm like, no, Milu, you like are technical now. Like you need to just like act like you know what you're doing. Like we're all doing, right? Like we're trying our best. Do you have that intimidation with the term like cybersecurity expert?
Oh, absolutely. It was one of those things where, I started diving into it, started doing things. There's some influencer programs I'm a part of or was a part of at that time that, was focused more on cloud and data and infrastructure type things. And then they invited me to a security focused event. And I'm sitting there with all of these other people that have been focusing on security for years to some extent. And realizing, wait a second, I'm an influencer in this space now just because I'm at this table. And somehow I proved to somebody I was able to sit at that table. Imposter syndrome is real. I'm very familiar with it. Having been rose quickly early in my career and oftentimes being the youngest. I mean, I think I spent the first 10, 15 years of my career being the youngest person on my team. Constantly feeling like, how am I able to be here? How am I able to be in this position? So I'm quite very familiar with that. With a recent job hunt, I was trying to get more cybersecurity focused roles, but realizing my resume didn't have the credentials on it that really was getting me through the doors I needed to get to for that. So it was really a challenge in that regard, and that somewhat unfortunately proved my imposter syndrome, which is kind of the worst thing you can do with imposter syndrome is have it proven to you.
Well, I think it's like the fulfilling the prophecy of why we're like doing this thing, why we've been like, what is it about cybersecurity that feels so unapproachable? And why is it like, if I explain you to anybody that would be willing to listen, I'd be like, oh my gosh, Brian has IT, technical marketing, product, like very technical experience, and also is super passionate about cybersecurity. This person like totally gets it. And honestly would probably be like an incredible performer in a cybersecurity specific role because you get it and you would understand the strategy of the business and how to talk the talk across, right? Like the most successful CISOs are the ones that actually can talk about security to anyone within the company, not just the technical people, because then your security program has just immediately failed by the fact that like, they're like, oh, security is scary and we don't want to talk about it. So like, it makes me sad to hear that, but I have the same experience. And I think that's another reason why we get so along so well is that you and I both just like are like change makers. I don't know. We're like market disruptors or just like changelings or something, like whatever the comment is of just like, we are not the standard cybersecurity expert. And we're also not claiming to know everything, right? Like by doing this podcast and talking about Socializing Security. The intention behind this is to create a community around information security, data privacy, cybersecurity, IT. Like, we're hoping to just talk to different people and learn from them and build, like, if we can provide expertise, awesome. I think you and I have a good amount of wealth of information to provide, but even better if we can bring on other cybersecurity experts, right? And like help us all learn together. When we're thinking about the types of conversations we're wanting to have on this podcast, what are the things you're most excited about to start diving into?
Yeah, I mean, I think we talked about on the first episode that there's a lot of topics we've already thrown onto the list. So there's no lack of things to be excited for. For me, like I mentioned, just helping people understand that they all have a role to play and what that role is. You know, it depends on your job duty, but there's some basics that everybody needs to abide by. So I love having that conversation because it's one of those conversations that never gets old. It never gets old to talk to people and talk about the fact that, hey, everybody's got a role to play. Let's talk about what your role is. You know, there's a lot of shifts going on around social media. You know, blogging was huge for a while there, and then it kind of disappeared with the short form Twitter type of posts and Facebook and Instagram kind of started to erode that. And as video rose, people were doing less blogging. Newsletters used to be a big thing, and then they kind of disappeared with social media. Now social media is getting so disrupted that you're starting to see a lot more blogging and a lot more newsletters coming back. And, you know,
Podcasts.
Podcasts have been on a nonstop trajectory.
We're like a little bit like on the back end of the podcast train, I think. But
well, and it's I wouldn't say it's declining by any means at this point, but it's evolving. It's changing. You know, I've been hearing that the ideal podcast length is somewhere between 15, 20 minutes and 3 hours. That blows my mind. But when you look at some of the most successful podcasts on either side, yeah, there's kind of an anti-bell curve a little bit there.
I will just jump in and say here, we are not planning on recording 3-hour podcasts. That being said, if asked to, we absolutely could, because Brian and I, just the way that our just like friendship works is we could just talk and talk and talk. And I don't think that's the point of this particular podcast, but let us know. I mean, we're trying to build community around security. I have no issue hanging out with you for a couple hours to just pick your brain about security topics, but like, I don't think that's the vision for this thing.
Yeah.
But maybe.
Yeah. and you know, that's another thing I'm looking forward to is just how does it evolve? Just like everything, things evolve. Like you throw things out there and it has to change. I've been a part of, you know, a startup in the IT infrastructure space, and, you know, it evolves over time. And those of us that watch that space have seen it happen time and time and time again. Is we think the market need is X, and you throw it out there and you get some success with X, and then customers start nudging you towards Y, and all of a sudden your product is about Y more than it is about X. And so I think we're both looking at this to be a long-term thing, which means that it has to evolve over time because people's interests will change. You know, I don't think we'll ever hit the bottom of the well of topics, but at some point, you know, we may start phasing into other things. And of course, the industry is going to change out from underneath of us. 2 years ago, if we'd started this, we wouldn't be thinking about AI topics, but that's, you know, 10% of the topics we have on our list right now.
It's just like everything on my social media feed is related to AI, to the point that I start to get frustrated when people are like, we need to push content on. I'm like, okay, like I get it. But like now I just feel like I'm doing it to join in and not be, but I'm like, actually, no, I have thoughts on this and could be a thought leader on responsible AI usage and AI governance and like regulation related to that. And I am super passionate about it, but I'm also kind of frustrated by the fact that I'm like, well, you know, people have been talking about this for a while. This is one of those things that like cybersecurity experts have been complaining and warning us for a while, but unfortunately it's not until like massive issues happen. For example, like this week, there was a pop culture icon who is all over my particular newsfeed related to like, unfortunately, like explicit images that were shared as deep fakes. And that's so scary. And it's exciting to see people like sharing information about that and raising the alarms around that. But it's also just like, okay, cool. But like, this has been an issue for regular people for like a while. Like the idea of like revenge porn and those types of issues with like CSAM materials is not new. It's just because we're seeing it impacting a superstar Now it's
Yeah.
all over my newsfeed in a different kind of way. And so it's like, I mean, again, I'll take it. If we're going to like fix it, let's do it now. It impacts all of us, but I think you and I just keep coming up with ideas because it's like literally every day I'm confronted with security stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I just had an issue where like my security was basically accidentally breached because I was on a recorded line and a provider that I use uses my voice as my password.
Yep.
That's so great until I have to have a third party on the phone call with me, and that's part of their standard verification. And like I hope they have a good recording option, but I wasn't even given the option to be like, no, thank you, like
Yeah.
not right now. And so now I have to like scramble on the back end to be like, shoot, my voice can no longer be my password because it's been exposed
Yep.
by myself. Like I did that. I'm a cybersecurity expert. I'm a data privacy person. Like, and I just accidentally breached my own vocal password. Like, okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
And it's tough for everybody. And that's part of what I think we're excited to show is that it's tough for everybody. It's not easy for cybersecurity professionals to do the right thing, because our systems aren't built to do the right thing by default. They're built to do the easy thing or the thing that makes whoever created it money. It's not about making sure that we're all secure, and so we've got to be thoughtful about those things, and that's one of the things we want to make more obvious to everybody.
yeah. So pivoting a little bit, what do you want me to call you on the podcast? What do you want our guests to call you? Our listeners? Do you want to be Brian? Do you want to be BK? Do you want to be, I've been floating PB as podcast Brian. I have too many Brians in my life. So you are among wonderful company, but yes, I have a couple of you. So is it BK? Is it Brian? Is it PB?
It's whatever. It's PB is one that I probably wouldn't respond to immediately just because I haven't heard that one before, but I've been living with BK for a number of years now because there were too many Brians when we worked together, and so we needed a shorthand that was a little bit easier to differentiate.
Brians when we
it was
worked
weird.
together.
I've never worked with so many Brians, much less in a company of 200 people. So yeah, I mean Brian's kind of the standard. BK's fine. I don't think anybody should get hung up on what to call me because I've had so many nicknames over the years that some of which I will never admit to, and some of which are fairly standard out there these days, and some of which I liked, and some of which I didn't like, and so yeah. Good
So
question,
Brian is the political answer.
Yes, we'll go with that.
BK is the friendly answer. It'll depend who joins the podcast, I guess. If you were among the ranks of us when there were multiple Brians, it's probably going to be BK if I had to guess. And we would be happy to have them. But I'm so excited to be doing this. But I also just I don't want to dive in too much in our personal lives on this podcast because we care about privacy here. And we also don't want to ask stuff to people that they don't want to talk about. But is there like a personal anecdote you would feel free to share, like about one of your passion projects outside of this particular podcast?
I mean, I'm a tinkerer. Like I like a lot of different things. I like variety. And so sometimes my ideas shift on what we're doing. So, I mean, lately I've been trying to learn kind of electronics. I came up as a computer nerd, but I didn't really understand the underlying technologies of transistors and resistors and electricity and how that all works. So I've been playing with that a lot lately. It's made for some interesting projects. Everything from building an automatic feeder for our cat to
Ooh, I might need tips. Ours is broken. I have one that's super glitchy that is required in our household, but really glitchy.
Yeah, sounds like the one I made for myself. So I don't know that I can help you. But yeah, I mean, then it transitions into playing with LEDs a little bit, and that crosses over with me loving Lego and literally lighting up Legos, and so now the two kind of meet to some extent, and that's been kind of the big thing lately is just putting LEDs inside of Lego sets and lighting them up, lighting up headlights and fires and stuff like that is
I mean, if you're
kind of fun.
joining us on video, I give Brian feedback all the time that his like audio and video setup is just like incredible. Obviously, he has this beautiful blurred background right now, so we can't totally see what's behind him, which is good. We love that from a privacy perspective. But I will say, he just always just like exudes this like stunning, like whatever the light is. I've asked you, I still don't believe it's just LED strips. I am currently playing with my lighting setup, so we'll see. Hopefully it progresses so that I just continue to look younger on our videos as we continue to go. I'm just trying to I guess, live into the, like, I want the best light possible for this particular podcast, even if you're only joining us via audio, like how I consume my podcast that I listen to. But here we are recording video.
For those that want it.
For content.
Not required by any means.
Well, who knows? You never know. If we had dreams to do a live show one day, I would love to do that. And I think you would too. Okay, well, what are we going to talk about next? Do I get to talk about myself?
Yes. You get to do all the talking next time.
Great.
I get to sit back and just nudge you along on occasion. So
perfect. I'll try not to be too long-winded because I just am excited about this stuff. And so sometimes I can just talk about it too much. So I have to be mindful that I don't just keep going.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, one piece of advice people give a lot is you should interview every so often just to make sure that you have that skill sharp when you need it. I needed it recently, and so I had a lot of interview conversations, which meant I had to practice being concise a lot. I
feel like this would have been helpful prep content, I'm going to be honest, for this episode, but I appreciate the feedback now. I just, I'm faking it as we go. So I think it was fine.
No. I mean, we're coming up at the time when we set for it, so I think we're good.
All right.
Cool. Well, look forward to learning more about you next week, Mayilu. We've known each other for a while, but there's always more to learn. So
yeah, I can just talk to you about my plant projects that I've got going on because that's probably the stuff you don't hear about much. And then, we're still trying to actively figure out what community looks like for this Socializing Security podcast. So you can follow us on LinkedIn and you can email us if you have questions or ideas about things you want to talk about, or if you're also frustrated about your voice being a password. It's info@socializingsecurity.com, and we will get back to you as soon as we can. And we're excited about the next episode.
Yep. Bye, everybody.
Cool. Talk soon.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of Socializing Security. We hope you learned a thing or two with us.
If you'd like to continue socializing with us on this topic or have feedback, we'd love to hear from you on LinkedIn or social media. Just search for Socializing Security. Or you can email us at info@socializingsecurity.com.
Until next time, stay social and stay secure.